Hey there, my name's Daphne. I'm a 30-year-old woman who owns and runs a luxurious beach resort in my state. Now, of course, since I'm the owner, I do have a lot more leeway regarding where I can work, and I choose to work from home. Now, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law did not take kindly to that. What followed was months of bullying and getting belittled. But I put them in their place in the best possible way. Let me get started with my story. I grew up in a very business-oriented family. We worked with a variety of industries, but our most profitable business was the hotel and resort industry. I grew up learning about how our business worked. When I turned 16, I began interning at our beachside resort. This resort became my life. I fell in love with it. Greeting clients and managing the accounts became something I looked forward to every day. My parents were beyond happy that I had taken such a keen interest in the family business. So for my 21st birthday, my parents surprised me with something really big. "Sweetie, your dad and I have been discussing something really big for last year." "Yeah, and we think that you've shown us more than enough potential to do it." "What are you guys talking about?" "Here, these are for you." "What is this?" "We're transferring the ownership of the beachside resort to you." "Are you serious?" "Yes, sweetie, we believe that you deserve it." "I mean, this one's been working on it since she turned 16. I don't think there's anyone else worthy of owning it." "I can't believe it. Oh my God. I promise I won't let you regret this decision." "Oh, we know you won't. You love that place way too much to ever let it go down in flames." I cannot even begin to describe how happy I was when I held the transfer paper on that birthday. Needless to say, I poured my heart and soul into the business. In about a year, business was booming. I had made so much income that I was pretty much settled for life. Of course, that was only possible because of my parents, but I was still really proud of myself. I happened to meet my husband, Brett, through a dating app. It had been about 5 years since I got ownership of the resort. I was thriving financially, but my romantic life was practically tragic. The loneliness began to eat away at me, which was why I signed up for the dating app. Anyway, we ended up matching and then planning on a date. Let me tell you, Brett's profile did not do him any justice because in person, he was 10 times more handsome. He was very charming and chivalrous as well. Obviously, we liked each other, so we went on many more dates. If there was one thing that my parents ingrained into me since a young age, it was to be wary of people. Only because when it came to money, people were never above trying to use you. For the longest time, I tried to dismiss what my parents were saying, but life taught me otherwise. So, even with Brett, I was cautious. We dated for about 4 years before I told him about my wealth. Brett was pretty indifferent towards it, which was what made me even more sure that he was going to be the one for me. He told me over and over again that my wealth wasn't something that was attractive to him, but it was who I was. Since I kept my wealth a secret from him for so long, I asked him to never let anyone else find out about it either, and he promised me he would. We got married with a pretty big ceremony. To be fair, most of the guests were far from my side, but regardless, Brett and I had the time of our lives. By the time we had gotten married, I had met Brett's mom, Kim, and his sister, Bree, a handful of times. They seemed pretty decent and not really problematic. They seemed a little awkward, and sometimes I would catch them speaking to each other in hushed whispers while pointing at me and laughing. I ignored it all because it didn't bother me. As long as they weren't actively ruining my relationship with Brett or my life, they could say and do whatever they wanted. Brett was peeved by their behavior, so he was more than understanding when I told him I would keep my distance from them. About 2 weeks after we got married, Brett asked me if his mom and sister could stay with us for a while. So my mom and sister called me today to ask if they could stay over at our place for a while. Oh? Why? Turns out they were a couple of months behind rent and are getting evicted. Oh no, that's horrible. Of course they can stay with us. But how long would they stay for? Mom said about 4 to 5 months. They need to work and save up for a new place. That's doable. But they will need to pick their load up around the house. If they live here, they have to contribute to chores and other things. Yes, of course. I'll make sure it happens. That decision turned out to be a horrible one. For some reason, Kim and Bree were under the impression that Brett owned our house. I did, by the way, not that that was an issue. I just had a lot more income than he did. Brett didn't say anything either because saying something would mean revealing my wealth. And who knew how much Kim and Bree would exploit me after that? They took one look at our place and assumed Brett was earning more money and decided to constantly belittle me. They never did their chores and instead left messes everywhere. No matter how many times Brett asked them to clean up after themselves, they never bothered because we're family. What's the big deal? Because I owned the resort, I had the free will to decide where I wanted to work from, so obviously I chose to work from home. For some reason, Kim didn't believe in working from home, and Bree was just plain disrespectful. Both of them would constantly disrupt me while I was in the middle of sorting through important things. If I had a meeting to attend, they would purposely have me run errands for them right before. If I tried to put up a fight, they would use the excuse of not having money or transportation to do it. What made it even worse was that neither of them were employed, nor were they making any actual efforts to find a job. They happily lived at our place, eating our food, using our utilities. I wouldn't have minded it if they had at least taken responsibility for their messes. I was tired of Kim and Bree looking down on me. I could stand it for a while, but I mean, come on, I live with them and I have to hear their stupid comparisons all day long. All they see is that I'm a stay-at-home wife who sits on her computer and phone all day. They think their son is the one who works really hard and brings home the money. I do not appreciate my husband, but even he knows what the truth is. Brett was just as tired of them as I was. He hated how they made him feel inadequate, even though they weren't doing it intentionally. Most of all, he hated how they didn't value me enough and thought it was okay to just walk all over me that day. It all came to a head one day when I invited some of my friends over for brunch. I told Kim and Bree about my plans and politely asked them to stay away from the common areas for an hour or two because my friends would be over. And then after that, we would all be heading out. They had happily agreed to it. I thought it was weird that they agreed to it so readily, but I decided to be grateful for the lack of fight and just accept it. Well, I found it weird for good reason. It took half an hour of my friends being in the house for Kim and Bree to walk in and introduce themselves. At this point, I'm annoyed. But then it got worse. They started talking about how I was a spoiled brat who only knew how to live off of other people's money. My friends looked wildly uncomfortable, but since they were my close friends, they knew about the details of my relationship with my mother and sister-in-law. My friends sat in an uncomfortable and awkward silence while I was just fuming, listening to Kim and Bree laugh at my expense. I knew that if I gave them a reaction, they would eat it up, so I just got up and grabbed my things. I asked my friends if they wanted to head out, and everyone agreed in a heartbeat. We were out of the door so fast you would have thought the house was burning down, which at that moment, I really wished it did happen. After I came back, I went straight to my room. I didn't think I would have been able to see Kim or Bree until I had calmed down. I was still seething at what they had done. They were beyond disrespectful and I was done with them. I wanted them to see just whose money they were living on. I waited until Brett came home to discuss my plans with him. How's work? It was okay, pretty tired. How was your day? Did Mom do something? Oh yeah. She did kind of cross the line though. Oh no, what did she do? Well, your mom and Bree agreed to remain in their rooms until my friends and I left, but surprise, surprise, they came downstairs. They then began to insult me and make fun of me. Your mom called me a spoiled brat. What the hell is wrong with them? I'm going to go and have a word with them. No, hold on. I have another plan in mind. I just wanted to know if it would be okay with you. I'm intrigued. Go on. How about we take them on a short little vacation to the beachside and we could stay at my resort? Oh my God, that's genius. That will put them in their place for sure. Right. Okay, but this is where my plan may get a little more evil. I think I'll be on board anyway. Go on. What if I don't allow them to stay in there? Like bring them out all the way there and just leave them. We can enjoy ourselves. We can come back and wait till they figure their way back home. Let's do it. They deserve it. Do you want to kick them out too? Honestly, yes. Great. We can do that too. I'm tired of them freeloading off of us. We'll get the eviction notice written up first and then go on our vacation. We can give it to them when we leave them stranded. Why was I even worried about whether you would approve of my plan? We decided to plan the vacation for next week because Brett would have been able to get off then. In that week, I ran by my lawyer and asked him to help me notarize my eviction notice. I was so excited to give it to Kim and Bree. I was finally going to be able to show them the consequences of their actions. Once I had my eviction notice and once Brett got his leave approved, we sat down and figured out our itinerary. We figured that making the vacation look extremely authentic would only make the revenge sweeter. We wanted Brett's mom and sister to feel absolutely torn. At the same time, we knew that this vacation was going to be a starting point for us. We were finally going to be able to live our lives the way we wanted to. I had called my brother to come over and change the locks on my door. I also asked him to bring some of his friends who I would obviously pay over and pack up all of Kim and Bree's stuff from their rooms. I would not allow Kim and Bree back into my life and they would know it. It would take us about half a day to drive over to the beachside. And in all that time, I would let them say and do whatever they wanted. After all, I would be the one who had the last laugh. When we had everything ready, we decided to tell Kim and Bree. So, Daphne and I were thinking of going on vacation. Oh, to where? Just to the beachside. We were wondering if you guys wanted to join. Whoa, who are you to ask when it's my son's money you're spending? Mom, that's enough. The question was a simple yes or no one. Don't need to make a big fuss about it. Mom was right, Brett. You should be the one asking since you're the one spending the money. If you guys are going to keep this up, I'm going to take it as a no. Forgive us for thinking of you, but we would be glad to join you guys on this vacation. Lord knows we need it after being cooped up in this house with Daphne. If you're going to be this way, I don't think I'd be comfortable with you coming along. Oh, please don't even try to have a say in this. My son has asked us to come along, so we will go. You just have to deal with it. I was irritated. I could see that Brett was too. The amount of entitlement those two carried around with them was actually astonishing. The only thing that allowed me to keep cool was the plan. I knew I'd have to hear a lot of insults and taunts, but I was ready for it. So we're set to go for our vacation that weekend. Kim and Bree were yapping our ears off, but every once in a while, Brett and I would shoot each other knowing looks. When we finally reached there, Kim and Bree looked at the resort with their mouths wide open. They began loudly discussing how beautiful the resort looked. They kept pausing Brett because they were proud that he could afford for them to go to such a luxurious resort. Brett kept his head down in embarrassment. Kim and Bree also didn't fail to make me feel inadequate. They kept telling me to be grateful that Brett invited me along because I was very undeserving of everything Brett did for me. I held my head up high as I walked through the doors into the resort. Kim and Bree walked behind me, taunting me all along, while Brett waited with the bellhop to unload our things. As soon as I got to the receptionist greeted me by referring to me as boss. Boss? Excuse me, but who are you referring to as boss? Oh, I was referring to Miss Daphne. You clearly can't tell the rich from the poor. If there's anyone you should be referring to as boss, it's us. I'm sorry, but Miss Daphne is quite literally my boss. What? Look, if this is some sick joke, I want to speak to your manager. The highest authority of this establishment just walked in with you, Mom. I don't think there's much my manager can do for you. Both of their faces paled. They tried to argue about it further with the receptionist, but she continued to stand her ground about me being the owner of the resort. I just stood and watched them stutter and fumble their words as the realization of how they had been treating me started to kick in. I guess they started to put two and two together as they realized that all the time I spent on my phone and laptop was not actually lazing about, but me actually working and earning money. When Brett walked in, they immediately went to him and began to yell at him. How could you lie to us? What are you talking about? Don't try to act smart. How come you never told us that your wife was the owner of this resort and probably filthy rich? Why should I be the one to tell you about other people's business? It was not my place to say anything. You've embarrassed us. All this time, if we had known, what? You would have treated me nicer? No need to be rude about it. If you needed to know about my social status and earnings for you to treat me like a decent human being, then I don't want either of you to be a part of our lives. You don't get to decide for my son. Tell her, Brett. Actually, Mom, she has a point. Are you seriously taking her side over ours? I've told both of you time and again to stop being mean to Daphne, but not once have you listened. You only stopped doing it in front of me. That was beyond disrespectful. I don't want to have anything to do with either of you. Here is your eviction notice. When you return back, you'll find all of your things packed and out of the house. Don't bother trying to enter the house. I made sure to have all the locks changed. All the best on your journey back. You're leaving us just like that? You can't do that. We're family. If family actually meant something to you, you wouldn't have treated me this way. But we don't have any way to get back home. At least let us stay here. Well, here's $100. Figure your way back home. Goodbye now. The look of pure shock on Kim and Bree's face was so satisfying. I couldn't believe I was finally going to be able to get rid of them. I finally don't have to constantly look over my shoulder in my own home. My home can finally become my safe space once again. Brett was in the same boat. He felt free too. I knew it because I could see how happy he was. He had a bounce in his step and he was super smiley and laughy. I loved seeing him that way. Our mini vacation went super well. We had the time of our lives, and when it was time to go, we were actually excited to go back home for the first time in a while. It's been about 6 months since all of this happened, and let me tell you, I'm never giving up my peace of mind for family. I mean it in the way that bullies in families are the worst, and I will never help them out again. I'm just grateful my husband was on board with everything and had my back. I don't know much about what happened to Kim and Bree after everything. When we came back, all their stuff was gone, so I knew that they had managed to find a way to get back. Later, Brett had gotten calls from several family members about him abandoning his mother and sister after lying to and manipulating them. Brett obviously did not let his mom and sister's lies live. He provided proof and cleared our names. As far as I know, Kim and Bree have been cast out by the entire family, and none of them want to help them out. I'm glad Brett and I managed to get rid of the biggest source of toxicity in our lives. We are happier and livelier now, and I couldn't have life go any other way. Thanks for listening. Hello, I'm Sarah, a 29-year-old woman, and I've just recently gotten divorced. It happened because my husband, or rather ex-husband, was a cheating douchebag. But the way I found out was not the way I thought it would go. There was something good that came out of it, at least. But let me first tell you about how we met. I met Gavin at a bar. He happened to be there for some work-related party. He was the one that approached me, and he pretty much kept me company the entire night. I must admit that I was very insecure about myself, so to get that much attention from a man was nothing short of an ego boost. Anyway, after we met for the first time, we went out on a couple of dates. I found out that he was 6 years older than me, but I didn't mind that because I had always had a thing for older men. He was also surprisingly a lot more charming than he was at the bar. We went on multiple dates until we decided we wanted to make our relationship official. Before I continue, I should tell you that my big dream has always been to own my own place. My parents lived way too far away for me to live with them, and I didn't want to always live on a lease. My parents helped me with half the down payment while I worked my butt off for the other half. Anyways, Gavin and I dated for around 2 years before we decided to tie the knot. Our wedding was a pretty small affair, with our guests being only our closest friends and family, and we loved every bit of it. Our relationship thrived after we got married. Never in a million years had I thought that Gavin was thinking of or even capable of cheating on me. Another thing I do want to say is that Gavin's mother, Eleanor, and I had a really good relationship. She always told me that I was like the daughter she never had. Every time I went over, I was pampered senseless by her. It was even more amazing to have her as a mother-in-law because she helped me feel better about the distance I had between my parents. She made me feel like I still had my mom with me. So when I finally had saved up enough to pay the down payment for a house, and I did purchase a house, the first people I celebrated my milestone with were Gavin and Eleanor. Both of them were really happy for me, and I was glad I had good people by my side. The only weird thing that happened was Gavin being adamant about being the one to create copies of the house keys. I didn't think much of it because I just thought that Gavin wanted to lighten my workload or something. I don't know, it's dumb, but that's just how I rationalized it. The next year, Gavin and I lived blissfully. We had a whole house that we could decorate and design however we wanted to. Gavin and I took up several renovation projects that I thought brought us only closer because it entailed spending a lot of time together. Essentially, I thought our relationship was going great. And then, one day, Eleanor called me out of the blue. "Hi, Sarah." "Hey, Eleanor, what's up? Why the sudden call?" I don't know how to put this nicely. I have some rather shocking news. Do you think you could be seated for this?" "Seated? What's wrong? Are you okay?" Yes, I'm okay. I just know this will devastate you, and I need you to not hurt yourself." "Eleanor, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "Okay, so I happened to overhear Gavin talking to someone on the phone the other day when you guys were over for brunch. He seemed to be speaking very lovey-dovey with them. I knew it couldn't have been you because, well, why would you guys speak on the phone when you were in the same place?" "Oh, well, I started snooping through his stuff. I know it's not right, but I just didn't want my son to be a cheater. I made up some stupid excuse and managed to get access to his email. I managed to find out that he has been cheating on you with 2 other women." "What? How? How could he do this to me?" "I'm so sorry that this is happening to you. I know it's barely any consolation, but I'm super ashamed of Gavin. I'm just so broken right now. Why would he do something like this? Wasn't I enough for him? He had to go and cheat with not 1 but 2 other women?" "Oh, honey, that's not the case at all. No one deserves this, and neither do you. But I'm afraid it does get a little worse." "What could possibly make this situation any worse?" "Well, it turns out that Gavin made copies of your house keys and gave them to his affair partners." My world was spinning around me. What was going on? I wanted to yell at Eleanor. No, that was not right. I was angry, but I was not angry at her. I was angry at Gavin for ruining something so perfect and to defile my house in such a manner. I wanted to obliterate him. This was the last thing I had expected from him. He knew how hard I worked to own my own place. How dare he do that to me? A million thoughts raced through my head. I didn't know how to feel because my emotions were a mess too. Nothing was making sense, and in all seriousness, I wanted to talk to Gavin about this and see what he had to say. There was no doubt in my mind that Eleanor was lying to me. Eleanor loved me way too much to do that to me. If anything, it was because she loved me that she was telling me about her cheating son itself. "Sarah, darling, are you there?" "Oh yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I'm just processing everything. I don't know what I have to do or even what I want to do. I'm just so angry and hurt." "I may have an idea if you're up to it." "Oh, what is it?" "What if we take a little revenge on Gavin? Then you can divorce him and leave him in the streets for all I care." "I love it. I'm fully on board with it." Also, I actually contacted these 2 girls. Turns out neither of them knew of the other, and they definitely had no idea that he was married too. "So that scumbag was cheating on 3 people at once? That's a new low even for him." "Yeah. So I was wondering if you'd be okay with letting these girls in on our little revenge plan." "You know what? That's perfect. Gavin has a weekend business trip this weekend to the other side of the city. At least I hope it is." I cross-checked with both of them, and neither of them has any plans with him anytime soon. "Great. I'm hoping there isn't another mistress, but invite the other 2 over and we'll discuss the plan." Eleanor and I talked for a little while more. She could tell I really needed a shoulder to cry on, although I hadn't yet begun to cry. I guess my brain was still in shock and I was going to take some time to react, or I was just completely numb by the new information. Either way, I was still a mess. My emotions kept shifting from anger to sadness to hurt. Eleanor helped calm me down a little. She also helped me figure out how to treat Gavin normally until his business trip. I knew it would be a hassle. If I was this unstable with Eleanor, how would I maintain my composure in front of Gavin? At the same time, deep down inside, I knew I had to do it because I had to make Gavin feel the panic and pain I had felt. When Gavin got back from work that evening, I treated him like I always did. Whenever he smiled or laughed, I wanted to punch him. When he kissed me goodnight, I wanted to wash my mouth off with acid. I was hurting so deeply that I didn't think I could actually ever feel that way. How could he cheat on me and then treat me like I was the most important person to him in the world? I cried myself to sleep that night, but I woke up the next morning and made myself look better. I couldn't let Gavin know that something was wrong. I bid him goodbye as usual. Eleanor called and asked if she and the girls could come over. I said they could, and within an hour all three of them were over at my place. When I saw the girls, I was kind of taken aback. Both of these women were young. One of them looked dangerously young. At that moment, I only hoped that she was legal and Gavin hadn't committed a crime. Eleanor greeted me with a tight hug. She was tearing up, and it took everything in me to not break down too. I invited them all in, and we sat down on the couch to talk about how things turned out for us. The first thing I found out about these girls was that one of them was named Riley and the other was Sadie. Sadie was the one who looked dangerously young, but my fears were calmed down when she told me she was 23 years old, while Riley was 25. Honestly, it wasn't great to hear that Gavin was having an affair with a woman who was a good 12 years younger than him. I found out that he had been having an affair with Riley for about a year, which meant that it started right around after we got married. That stung. He hadn't been happy with me since the first year of our marriage. What had I ever done or not done in this case, I guess? Riley had met Gavin at a bar, and apparently he was very persuasive about wanting to sleep with her. Sadie had a similar story, except his affair with her started 6 months ago. He had met her at a bar too and persuaded her into sleeping with him. He had bought both of them multiple drinks and refused to leave their side. They were a little uncomfortable, but I guess Gavin had a knack for finding insecure women. These poor women were entranced by all the attention they were getting, so they just followed along with him. Both of them thought they had found something amazing with him after their first interaction. They told me about how he had been over to their places multiple times and even spent nights there. Over the course of the conversation, we began to slowly realize just how well Gavin had played us. He used the excuse of business trips all the time to explain his time away from us. Then we began talking about all the things that he did to make us fall for him in the first place. Since I had been the oldest of the three of us, I started telling them about how he had been super charming and how he was a great listener. They agreed with me. As the conversation went on, we realized that he literally used the same moves on all of us. If any one of us received flowers, the other two received them as well. I don't know what he was trying to accomplish with that, but I felt like I was about to throw up. All this time that I thought we were doing amazingly, we weren't. Every time he made me feel special, like I was the only woman in his eyes, I was not. I was just one of the ladies on his roster. I felt beyond betrayed. Riley and Sadie looked pale, and I figured I did too. We kind of just sat in silence for a while as we processed everything we had learned. Eleanor was the one to break the silence and bring us back to earth. Wow, okay, so my son is the scum of the earth, but we're not here to discuss that. Eleanor? No, I get it. I know you guys are hurt and you feel betrayed. I may not have the same relationship with my son, but to an extent, I feel those emotions too. I mean, at some point, I feel like I failed as a parent. You are and were an amazing parent. You raised him with good values, but at the end of the day, it was his decision to make these choices. He's a grown adult who's capable of making his own decisions. Thanks, sweetie. But my point is, what are we going to do about this? To be completely honest, I want to beat him up. I can't believe I wasted an entire year on this douchebag. I second the beating him up. Cheating is the one thing that I can't stand. Look, I want to do the same, but that won't do him any good. Sarah's right. We need to come up with a plan. We're going to need him to feel panic and betrayal. Okay. How about I call him this weekend and tell him I'm at your place? Oh, I could do the same. Yeah, and since he'll be away, he'll be panicking about our meeting. And what if he does manage to make it back home that night? We'll just be sitting inside, home and looking like we're the best of friends. That's smart. That will definitely make him sweat even more. Yeah, then you can slap him with the divorce papers and we can, well, slap him if we feel like it. I won't stop you guys from doing that. And if it's any consolation, we signed a prenup. So when we get divorced, he'll literally have nothing. That makes me feel really good. He deserves nothing, and I'm glad he'll get what he deserves. Good. Now we have a plan in place. Sarah, let's get your divorce filed, and then we'll work out the rest of the plan. We still had about 2 days till Gavin's trip. I don't know where I got my self-control or my patience from, but I was grateful that I had found it. I managed to keep the act up regardless of every instinct I had to confront him. I stopped crying because, as messed up as it seemed, I guess it felt a little nice to know that I wasn't in this all alone. There were other women who were hurt too, and if not for myself, I knew I needed to avenge these women. Riley, Sadie, Eleanor and I had created a group chat. We kept each other updated there. I wasn't worried about Gavin snooping through my phone because he had never shown any interest in anything I ever did, which I now realize might have been because he was too busy cheating on me. Anyways, whenever Gavin left for work, Eleanor would come over and we'd go to the law firm and get the divorce filed and the papers printed. By the time it was time for Gavin's trip, everything had been set up. Sadie, Riley, and Eleanor came over about an hour after Gavin left. We all kind of just hung out and talked about how we were feeling. The girls shared the same sentiment of not feeling alone in all of this with me. I was glad that we all felt connected in some weird, messed up way. Eleanor lent us a solid shoulder to cry on. I knew she was hurting too, but I was glad that she never put her hurt over ours, and that she recognized the difference between our hurt. I waited until Gavin texted me another hour later that he reached his location to give Riley the go. She then picked up her phone and called Gavin. She had the phone on speakerphone. Gavin sounded pleasantly surprised to see her call him. Riley acted all excited and told him that she was coming over in half an hour because she had a surprise for him. Gavin sounded a little frantic. He kept trying to convince her not to go, but Riley was adamant and told him that she would be there before hanging up. Sadie waited about 15 minutes before she called Gavin. Unlike when Riley called, Gavin sounded snappy when he picked up Sadie's call. He asked her what she wanted and she replied that she was 15 minutes away from the house. She told him that she would wait for him inside. If Gavin was just a little frantic before, now he was fully panicking. He once again tried to tell Sadie that he was out of town and asked her not to go there, but Sadie told him she walked long enough and she was tired and she just wanted to rest. She hung up the phone on him before he could get a word in. I have to admit, I felt this huge rush of adrenaline after this. Just the thought of how much Gavin must have been panicking sent a rush of happiness and satisfaction all throughout my body. I couldn't wait to see his face when he got back. Since the big part of our plan was done, we decided to make ourselves some drinks to make what was about to happen even more entertaining. When the drinks began to kick in a little, we all couldn't help but laugh at how stupid Gavin was to give both of them copies of the keys to my house, especially when I literally worked from home. Somehow and somewhere along that time that we waited for Gavin to return, we began to heal a little. We began to see the truth and accept the reality of Gavin, and it felt refreshing. About 2 hours after we had called Gavin, we heard his car pull up in the driveway. By that point, we were pretty tipsy and unable to contain our excitement. Eleanor had been the one who reminded us that we needed to act well. We put on our best sober faces and readied ourselves to face Gavin and tear him down. Gavin quite literally burst through the door. "Babe, Oh! What's going on here?" "Oh, I invited your mom over." "Yeah, that's cool, but what about the other people here?" "Them? These lovely women showed up at my place and they seemed to know you, so I invited them in." "You never told me that you had such a pretty wife." "Me either." "Right, maybe it's time you leave." "Don't be rude, Gavin. I taught you better. Besides, we were having a girls' night. Why are you here?" "Yeah, why are you here? I thought you were away on a business trip." "A business trip? Is that why you couldn't spend time with me this weekend, even though we always spend time together every third weekend?" "Oh my God, he does that with you too." "Me too." "Look, guys, no, don't want to hear anything. I just want you out of my house." That's when I saw Gavin cry for the first time. He began crying and begging me not to leave him. The sight of him sobbing surprisingly did not make me feel any sympathy. It only made me feel even more disgusted. I didn't say anything much to him. I just got up and handed him the divorce papers. Gavin was a mess. He turned to his mother, but Eleanor just looked away. He tried to appeal to her, but she told him that he was dead to her. He truly looked like a man who had lost it all, and no sight was as satisfying as that. Riley and Sadie didn't slap him, but they did throw the copies of the house keys he had given them in his face and left. I had a bag packed and ready for him to take. I got it out and threw it at him. I told him he had 5 minutes to leave or I would get the cops involved. He left after that. I just sat down after that and finally cried again. This time Eleanor held me and both of us cried at the loss of someone who was so dear to us. An hour after Gavin left, my phone began to blow up with calls and messages from him. Every single text only made him seem more pathetic to me. In the next few months, my divorce would be finalized. Eleanor was a true rock for me in that time. Gavin's desperation turned into spite and he tried his hardest to contest the divorce and get something from me, but I had him sign an ironclad prenup before we got married, so he got nothing out of the divorce other than a large bill to his lawyer. Anyway, I didn't really keep tabs on what happened to him, and neither did Eleanor. The one positive thing that came out of this whole experience was the new friends I made. After the divorce got finalized, Riley, Sadie, and I went out to a bar to party as a final screw you to Gavin. We got a lot closer, and even though it's still a bit of a sore subject, we managed to find the humor in our shared experience. I guess the experience just showed me how life can take so many unexpected turns, but if you have the right people by your side, every unexpected turn can lead to something beautiful. Hello, I'm Evelyn. This incident took place a couple of years ago, and I'm happy to say that I've freed myself of these people. I did have lots of good times with them, but the bad times that I did have with them were enough to break our relationship. But before I tell you about the incident, I think it's necessary to give you a lot of background information about my ex-husband, Benny, and his family. Benny and I met at college. We were in our senior year when we met. We found each other because we were at the library at the same time almost every weekend. We always sat next to each other, and that just started a conversation. We ended up going on quite a few dates after our initial conversations. Before I knew it, we were dating. About 5 months after both of us graduated, we decided to move in together. Benny was a fun-loving and very easygoing man. I guess that's what drew me into him even more, because I was a very tightly wound person. I needed everything organized and in place, while Benny was a more go-with-the-flow kind of person. He balanced me out perfectly. A few months after we moved in together and had enough time to settle down with each other, we decided that it was time for us to introduce each other to our families. My family was a little overprotective of me, so Benny did have to go through an interview of sorts with them before he was approved. Meeting Benny's parents, on the other hand, made it clear to me where he got his easy personality from. Benny came from a family that loved to prank each other. They thought of it as a way to bond with each other. It was fun and cute most of the time. They were mindful enough to not go too far with the pranks when it came to me because they knew that I wasn't the biggest fan. The first prank they ever played on me was when I met them for the first time, back when Benny and I had just started dating. They purposely oversalted my food. I didn't know about Benny's love for pranks because Benny never warned me. He didn't tell me because that was supposed to be part of the whole plan. Anyway, while everyone sat and praised the food, I had to sit there and try my best to eat it. Benny's dad, Alan, kept asking me to continue eating, but I was already feeling like all the water in my body had dried up. Finally, Benny's mom broke her character and began laughing. I looked at her in confusion. She told me to stop eating. They told me that they had pranked me and it was a little initiation into their family. I will admit that it did make me laugh and I did enjoy that moment. I thought it would create a better dynamic between Benny's parents and me. Whenever I did meet Benny's parents, I would either be full on guard and ready to expose any prank, or I would take part in pranking someone. It was always a good time. I even knew that it made Benny feel great about me because I took the pranks so well. One day, I got curious about why Benny was just so appreciative of my good nature about the pranks. He literally never stopped thanking me for playing along with his parents' antics after we were returning back from his parents' place. "Why are you always so appreciative of me after we come back from your parents' place?" "Oh, because, you're okay with their pranks." "That's hardly a proper reason. Who wouldn't be okay with a bunch of harmless and fun pranks?" "Oh, trust me, a lot of people. I've had a lot of relationships fall through because they couldn't stand my parents' pranks." "That's crazy. This is all just good-natured fun, and it's a lot coming from me. I'm not even a fan of pranks." "I know. That's exactly why I'm so glad that you're okay with it. Hell, you even participate in pranking others." "Yeah, as long as no one is crossing any boundaries or getting hurt, there's no harm in some fun." I really hit the jackpot with you, didn't I? I'd love to say yes, but really, this is the bare minimum. I am concerned about the kind of women you were seeing before me, though. Knowing that Benny found me to be a breath of fresh air made me feel warm on the inside. Benny was the first guy that was actually fun to be around with. I didn't have to change a single thing about myself. He was careful to make sure he wasn't overstepping any of my boundaries, while also making sure that I was having a good time. I knew for sure that I had hit the jackpot with him. I guess it came as no surprise to anyone after dating for 3 years that we got engaged. Of course, the engagement also happened in a prank fashion. We were at Benny's parents' place for dinner one day, and his mom, Sherry, ended up spilling her glass of wine all over my dress. Everybody made such a big fuss about it, but I just laughed it off because I knew it was a prank. Sherry led me upstairs to help get into dry and clean clothes. She had me wear sweatpants and a hoodie because all her good clothes were in the wash. I tried suggesting that I could wear Alan's clothes, but she told me that they would be too big on me. I knew better than to argue with my boyfriend's mom, so I let it go. Anyway, when I got back down, Alan looked at me in confusion and asked me what was in my pocket. I don't even know how I didn't notice there was something in my hoodie pocket. I reached my hand into the pocket and pulled the object out. In my hand was a ring box. I looked up in confusion and saw Benny getting down on one knee. I couldn't help but scream a little. That was the best prank ever. Benny and I were set to get married in the next year. I had always made big plans for the kind of wedding I was going to have, and while I enjoyed the pranks that Benny's parents played, I knew I didn't want any pranks happening on my wedding day. I just wanted it to be a day of fun without anything going wrong. No humiliation or embarrassment, just good old-fashioned joy. I knew it would have been a sensitive topic to bring up with Alan and Sherry by myself, so I hoped that Benny would have been able to do it. Of course, I was also a little apprehensive about approaching him, but it was still 100 times easier to approach him than his parents. One night, before we went to sleep, I decided to talk to Benny about it. Hey, I need to talk to you about something. It's a little sensitive. Yeah? Let me just say that you know that I love your family and I thoroughly enjoy the way we're comfortable with each other enough to prank each other. Uh-huh. While I love them to bits, I also kind of maybe sort of don't want them throwing any pranks on our wedding. What? Why? It's only because I want us to have the perfect wedding. But what's more perfect than everyone laughing? Aren't there several other ways to make others laugh than one of us getting pranked? Yeah, I guess. I don't think my parents would be too happy about it. They love playing pranks, you know that. That's why I wanted to ask you if you would be able to talk to them about it. No way. I do not want to do that. They will probably not even listen. Look, I know that this is a big event and your family wants it to be big and full of who you are. But this is my wedding too. I'm just asking for something small. It's only one time and only for a few hours that I'm asking them not to play a prank. Yeah, I'm on board with whatever you want too. I just won't be the one to tell my parents. You have to do that yourself. But I'm already doing you a favor by agreeing to what you want. This is your duty now. You want it? You ask for it. I was annoyed with the way Benny was reacting. I was not asking him to do something crazy. I would never have had him ask my parents to do something I knew would upset them. I kept trying to get Benny to talk to his parents after that conversation, but he just didn't budge. I was upset, but since I wanted absolutely no pranks on our big day, I knew I had to talk to his parents. I decided to call Sherry and Alan over for dinner one night and broke the news to them. They were not happy. They tried to tell me that I was robbing Benny of enjoying a family tradition on his big day. But I didn't see why it had to be carried out on a big day to begin with. The air between Benny's parents and I was a little tense after that. They agreed that no pranks would be played at the wedding, and I breathed a huge sigh of relief. Benny also became a little distant from me, and even though I kept trying to talk to him about it, he never wanted to. At some point, I genuinely thought I was losing my mind. I mean, was it really that big of a deal? Was I actually being a douchebag? I didn't want to jeopardize my marriage before it even happened. I decided to talk to my mom about it because I was really close to just giving in and telling Benny that his parents could do whatever. I went to my mom because she was the most rational person I knew. She never let her emotions get in the way of her reasoning. Plus, she had been a victim of some of the pranks that Benny's family played, and while she didn't enjoy it, she wasn't mad about it either. Okay, I have a sort of dilemma. Oh, I love dilemmas. Lay it on me. Well, you know how Benny's family loves to play pranks? Uh-huh. Is it wrong of me to not want them to do any of that at our wedding? Why don't you want them to do it? I know I didn't enjoy their pranks, but you've never had a problem with it. Yeah, that's kind of why it's a dilemma. I just want a good old-fashioned wedding. I guess I'm also scared they'd take the prank too far, given that it's a big day for Benny and me. What did Benny have to say about that? Well, he wasn't happy in the least. He's been distant for a while now. Did you talk to Sherry and Alan? Oh yeah, we had a full-blown argument about it, and even though they agreed, they've been off with me ever since. I mean, if they're making such a big deal about it, they can't possibly have had something good planned. They must have been planning something big and embarrassing. Right. That's what I was thinking. And my money is on you being the one that would be humiliated. So I don't think you were wrong for asking for it. Just keep trying to talk to Benny. I'm sure he'll come around to understanding. I was grateful to have my mom clear my thoughts for me. She made me feel like I was actually sane and not going crazy. I did take her advice to talk to Benny properly, and although it did take a few days for him to actually come around to talking to me, he began talking to me properly, although he was still a little distant. I figured that it was the best I was going to get because he probably felt really bad about not being able to continue a tradition. About 2 weeks before the wedding, however, Benny suddenly began treating me really well. He was back to being his happy-go-lucky self. While I was happy to have him back to being himself, I was worried that the change came about because he was hiding something from me. I tried to ask him what was going on, but he kept reassuring me that there was nothing wrong and that he had just finally accepted what I had asked for. Even though all my instincts were screaming that Benny was lying, I decided to let it go because I had bigger fish to fry. On the day of our wedding, everything was going according to plan. The ceremony was beautiful and I cried way more than I should have. Benny also shed a few tears as I walked down the aisle. It truly was a memorable moment. Then came the reception. While it did start off okay, that was not how it ended. When it came time to cut the cake, Benny and I made our way over to the table that had the cake while everyone stood around us watching. As I went to cut the cake, Alan came forward, grabbed a piece of the cake and threw it in Benny's and my direction. Then Benny and Sherry also grabbed pieces of the cake and threw them in my direction. I was shocked. The guests around me fell silent as Benny and his parents roared with laughter. I had told them explicitly not to do this, and my mother was right. I was the one who was humiliated. Benny noticed the tears that were forming in my eyes and tried to talk to me, but I walked out of the hall. He followed me and grabbed my hand to stop me. "Babe, what's wrong?" "Are you serious? Are you actually asking me what's wrong? Look, if you're worried about the cake, there's another one waiting out back." "I don't care about the damn cake, Benny. I asked you guys to not do one thing, and that's exactly what you did." "Geez, calm down. It's just a small prank." "I don't care. You just went behind my back to do what I asked you not to do. On top of that, you decided that the perfect prank was to absolutely humiliate me and ruin my day." "Hey, to be totally honest, my parents came up with the prank. I just went along with it." "That's your problem. You knew I didn't want it, and you still let your parents do it. You didn't want to break the news to your parents, so I told them that I didn't want them playing any pranks. The least you could have done was keep them from doing it behind my back." "Why are you being such a crybaby about this? You've never had an issue before." "You're impossible." I stormed out after that and went over to my mom's. Thankfully, her mom had always kept a spare key under a flower pot outside the main door. I walked into the house and got my sticky cake-covered clothes off and took a nice long hot shower. I couldn't believe that Benny didn't even understand how bad what he did was. Okay, honestly, aside from the prank, I had paid good money for the dress and my makeup. He ruined it in one moment, and I didn't even get to have the perfect pictures of the two of us. I was raging with anger on the inside, and I knew for a fact that I did not want to see Benny and especially his parents for a while. My mom comforted me for the rest of the week. She told me that the wedding party practically died down after that, and Benny and his parents received a lot of backlash from the guests. I felt happy that, at the very least, I had people backing me up. Benny kept trying to get in contact with me to apologize, and I finally responded after a week of ignoring him. We met up at a dinner, talked about things. For the first time, I saw how devastated Benny was. He seemed genuinely apologetic and promised me that he would never let anything like that happen to me ever again. I was happy with Benny's apology, so I gave him a second chance. His parents, however, did not reach out to me until 2 months later. I didn't really want to talk to them, but they did apologize. I decided that 2 months was already way too long for me to hold a grudge against them, so if they actively made an effort to repair our relationship, I would give them a chance. Sherry and Alan actually came through with their efforts. They began hosting dinners at their place again, and pranks were put on hold for a while. They also genuinely apologized to me, and I forgave them. I was still very cautious of them when it came to big events, but they proved to me over time that they had changed. About 2 years after Benny and I got married, I got a huge promotion. Since I had a lot of extra cash to spare, I decided to give Benny and me a treat. So I was thinking with my big promotion, maybe you would like to go to Hawaii? Oh my God, are you serious? Yes, of course. We've been working really hard these past few years, and I think we deserve a good, luxurious break. That sounds amazing. Are you sure you want to spend your money on this, though? Of course. Why not? I don't know. We could maybe use it towards saving up for a house. I've already put money aside for that. This trip will happen with the extra money I have left over. Oh, wow. Okay, then. Although, what is it? So, my parents have been down on funds and they haven't been able to go on a trip together for a while. Do you think it would be possible to invite them along? I don't know. I wanted it to just be the two of us. I promise you they'll be on their own. They'll leave us alone and let us have our own fun. We'll just need to give them a little money to spend. Okay, that's doable. Although the second they do anything out of line, I'm leaving them there. I swear they won't do anything out of line. I was very skeptical of Sherry and Alan joining us because the last time I had a big expensive event, they ruined it. And Benny sided with them. I didn't want them to do anything to ruin the trip, so I decided to take some safety measures. About 2 days before we were set to leave for Hawaii, Alan and Sherry came over to stay. Our place was much closer to the airport and we didn't want to be late. Everything seemed to be normal. All of us were excited about our upcoming trip and we couldn't stop talking about it. I got busy with packing Benny's and my stuff. The night before the flight, I gave each of them their ticket and passport. None of them checked to see the contents of what I gave them, which was good because I only gave them one-way tickets to Hawaii. If any of them even tried to cross me, they could find their way back. It was the peak holiday season, so flight prices were soaring high. Ha, pun intended. I knew that they wouldn't have the money to come back, so they really had to be on their best behavior if they wanted to have a good vacation and come back home. I fell asleep that night feeling really excited about the trip. When I woke up, however, Benny wasn't next to me. That was odd because Benny never woke up before me. I'm always the one who was to literally drag him out of bed. I walked around the house and it's dead silent. I went over to the guest bedroom and it was empty. None of the packed luggage except for mine was there. As I walked back into my room to call one of them, I saw a note stuck to the door. The note said, "Look who got pranked again." I want to say that I was shocked, but I really wasn't. I was sad though. I really did think we had a good thing going on for a little bit. I believed that we had changed for the better, but that clearly wasn't the case. Benny and his parents only found joy in ruining the big things for me, and that was not going to fly. At that moment, I was so glad that I had foolproofed my plan. I waited until I was sure that the three of them had boarded the flight and had landed in Hawaii before calling them. I tried calling Benny and Alan, but neither of them picked up. Finally, I called Sherry and she picked up. "Hello, look who finally woke up." "Don't even try. Why did you guys leave without me? Couldn't you have woken me up?" "It was just a prank, Evelyn. Calm down." "How could you go on a trip that I planned without me? That's just cruel. This is the second thing you've sabotaged." "Oh, grow up, Evelyn. It was a tiny prank that we played on you. You can book yourself another ticket and come over." "Actually, you know what? You're wrong. Don't tell me you're going to throw a fit about this and not come at all. Don't be a baby." "Well, yes, but also I'm not the one that got pranked. You are." "What do you mean?" "Why don't you check your bag for the ticket and see? You only booked us a one-way ticket? How could you do that? Book us one return ticket now. I'm sorry, Sherry, but you play stupid games and you win stupid prizes. Enjoy your little vacation. Oh, and tell Benny that I'll be divorcing him. Bye now. I don't know what happened to the three of them after or how they managed to come back, but when they did, I had the divorce papers delivered to Benny. He tried to reach out to me and left me hundreds of voicemails ranging from anger to abandoning them to pleading for me to stay with him. I knew I wanted nothing to do with him because he had proved to me that he could not be trusted. I have since moved on from Benny. I have learned to live on my own once again, and I have learned what it is like to make sure my boundaries are always being respected. And that's something that everyone should learn. Family or not, boundaries are boundaries and they are meant to be kept. Don't get played. Hello, my name's Val and I'm 34 years old. My mom passed away when I was only 5 years old. My dad raised me for the next 7 years all by himself. When I was about 11, my dad told me that he was seeing someone. I was a child and I didn't really care much for it. When I turned 12, Dad introduced me to his girlfriend and told me that they were going to get married soon. The first thought that I had was that his girlfriend was really young. Dad introduced us to each other and told me that her name was Jody. I later found out that Jody was only 10 years older than me. I remember I was a little freaked out by such a short age gap between us, but I eventually stopped caring about it. Jody and I didn't have the best relationship. She was overbearing and she kept trying to be my mother. I tried to talk to my dad about it, but he thought that Jody was right. I didn't like it, and as soon as I turned 18, I moved out. Although I did move out, I still had a really good relationship with my dad. We would go out to get lunch every other weekend. I remember initially Dad would try to get me to involve Jody in my life, but when he saw I wasn't budging, he dropped it. Although he would tell me about how much he loved Jody in the hopes that I would come around to liking her because he loved her. I was doing pretty great in my life though. I managed to get a job at this reputed firm right out of college. I wasn't rich, nor was I living paycheck to paycheck. I was living comfortably. I had started saving right from the start, and in a couple of years I was doing amazingly. When I was 28, my dad got into a freak accident and ended up passing away. Dad's passing away was devastating for me. I couldn't believe that this was what my life had come to. The only family member I had was gone. I was a mess. I cried myself to sleep every night and I barely could function in the morning. I was lucky enough to get a week off of work to grieve. I wasn't the biggest fan of Jody, but I knew she loved my dad, so I made sure to check up on her regularly. The first time I met her, she looked normal. I didn't expect her to be wearing all black and mourning at home, but I did expect her to look a little worse for wear. I knew for a fact my eyes were very puffy and they had the darkest circles around them. My nose was red and my skin was splotchy from all the tears. Jody, on the other hand, looked like she was completely fine. Okay, I know this is coming off as judgmental, but I kind of hope to feel like I wasn't the only one grieving so hard for the man who was my world. But my suspicions went away after a little bit when I sat down with Jody to talk and she began to cry. We spoke for a while about how great my dad was and how the world feels empty without him. After that first visit, I started to visit Jody a lot more. We would have tea together and just talk about everything that we were feeling. I thought we were beginning to finally develop a connection. I was tired of her trying to replace the role of my mother, so it was nice to have talked to her as just her. One particular day, when we were talking, she suddenly burst into tears. I was alarmed because We weren't even talking about anything emotional. I got up from my seat and made my way over to her to let her cry into my shoulder. When she calmed down a bit, I asked her what was wrong. Is everything okay? What's wrong? I just got a letter from the bank. Uh-oh, what did they say? You know how I have been super busy with taking care of your dad these past few months, along with taking care of all the medical expenses? Yeah, well, I haven't had much money to pay off our mortgage, which has now transferred to me. I don't even have a job. I'm going to be homeless. Oh no, is that what the bank told you? Yeah, they've given me 4 months to pay off all my dues. Of course, along with the 4 months mortgage payments as well. I don't have that kind of money. Your dad didn't even leave me that much. I know. It's okay. No, it's not okay. Calm down, Jody. I have some money in my savings. I can help you out. Really? You do that for me? Yeah, of course. You've become someone I've come to understand recently, and I value you a lot. Plus, Dad would have been happy with me for doing this for you. Thank you so much, Val. If I do help you with your payments, I have 2 conditions. Yeah? I can't rent a place and pay your mortgage. I will need to move in. Of course, honey. This house is yours, too. Great. Secondly, I can't keep paying off your mortgage. You need to find a job soon and start taking care of it. I can contribute half of it, but you'll still need to find a job. And over time, in the future, you'll need to pay me back too. I promise I will. I did feel sympathetic towards Jody. Going from being financially stable to desolate is a very big and scary change. I couldn't have imagined what kind of anxiety Jody must have been feeling because of it. But I had quite a good amount in my savings. If there was one thing my dad taught me, it was always to have a good amount of savings, because you never know when hard times will fall. Over the next week, I contacted Jody's bank and got to working around the mortgage repayments and having the foreclosure nulled. Jody hadn't paid the mortgage in 4 months, so there was that, along with late fees and pre-foreclosure fees. In total, it racked up to be about $12,000. I had it in my savings, but it did make a pretty large dent in it. Jody was super grateful that I managed to help curb the foreclosure. She went all out and prepared a feast for me to say thanks. I was glad to see that she was actually being grateful, because the Jody I knew before would have acted a little entitled to my help. Although I did remind her that she needed to start job searching soon. She promised me that she had already started looking for jobs. I also moved in with Jody. It was pretty interesting to live with her again. Jody was a lot more demanding than I remembered her being, but I didn't mind that. She was just demanding that the house be spotless, although she did try to get me to be that way about my room too, but I put her in her place by telling her that my room was mine and I liked it the way it was. I respected her wanting the common areas to be clean, and so she should at least respect my wish for my room to be the way I want it to be. She gave in, and I suspected that was only because she knew that the reason she had a house to be demanding about was because of me. We did have tiny spats every once in a while, but for the most part, it was good to live with her. Slowly but surely, the weeks turned into months and the months into years. After a year passed, I began to be frustrated with Jody for not finding a job. She kept telling me she was searching for one, but I never saw any results. Hell, I didn't even hear her mention having an interview even once. I confronted her about it, and she got very defensive. Jody, I don't mean to be that way, but when are you going to get a job? Do you think I'm not trying? No, that's not what I meant. It's just been a year since you promised me, and I just need to have a definite time for how long I have to keep paying the mortgage. I don't know when it will happen, okay? Have you had any interviews so far? No, but I haven't been getting any responses. How about you apply for a part-time job at least? Ugh, no way. I'm trying to help you out here. I can't keep paying your mortgage, Jody. If it's that much of a hassle for you, then don't do it. I'll just be homeless. It's fine. Whatever. I'm sure your dad would have been happy to see me struggling like that. No, it's okay. I'll keep paying. But I'm telling you, I can't keep doing this. Yeah, and I'll find a job. Just give me some time. It didn't click at that time, but for Jody to use my dad as a way to appeal to me was kind of messed up. I diligently paid off the mortgage for a while after that too. Jody did become a lot more overbearing after that. She began to get annoyed about when I got back home and who I hung out with during weekends. It irked me, but at first I didn't say anything. When she got out of hand, I stood up for myself and put her in her place yet again. She would always quiet down, but I would sense her dislike for me after. She would go weeks without properly talking to me, and I would feel so icky when I saw her the way she used to be when my dad was still alive. Regardless, I still helped her out. Another year passed and I decided to put my foot down. I never saw Jody make an effort to start working. I know it's wrong, but one day when she was out, I went through her emails on her laptop that she had left unlocked on her bed. I found out that in the past 2 years she had only applied to one firm, and that was also right after I agreed to help her pay off the mortgage. I was angry and disgusted with her ability to lie to me. After I had been so accommodating and nice to her, all she was doing was taking advantage of me. So when she came back home that night, I told her that I was no longer going to help her out. Needless to say, Jody did not take that well. How can you do this to me? I've given you 2 years to figure your things out. You've refused every form of advice I've given you, and you haven't made any effort to actually get your life together. You really think I haven't been making any efforts? Jody, I know you aren't making any effort. You're just making false accusations. All right, then why don't you show me all the places you've applied to this year? That's an invasion of my privacy. Look, I'm glad that you and I have been able to develop a pretty good relationship in the past few years, and I'm glad that I have been able to help you out. But I need to start looking out for my future too. I have never wanted to own my own house, and I hate that I'm stuck paying for something that has never been part of my plan. Oh God, what am I going to do? Jody sobbed for a long while, and it did get to me. Although that night I left her there because I was still angry with her. I decided to do a little research to maybe help Jody out. I knew that I couldn't keep providing for her, so if there was any way she could keep herself afloat, I'd like to be able to help her find it. The next day, Jody refused to talk to me, but I asked her if she would just listen to me. I informed her that she should file for bankruptcy so she could get an extension on the loan payments and even get time off from paying it for about 5 years. Jody finally acknowledged me and asked me if I could help her out with filing the paperwork. Of course, I told her that I would help her, and we spent the next few weeks getting everything approved. Once Jody was free of her mortgage payments for the next 5 years, I told her that she still had to get back on her feet once again. Jody coldly told me that she had things under control now and asked me to move on. Well, that hurts. But I guess that was what happened when you stop letting someone use you. I moved out within the next month and I was doing good once again. My finances were back on track. I was able to get a promotion at work about 2 years after I moved out from Jody's place, which allowed me to save even more money and even make some big investments. Jody and I barely kept in contact. She didn't make any effort to contact me, but I tried because at the end of the day, she was my dad's wife and he loved her dearly. I would ask her how she was doing, and if she managed to find another job, she would always speak coldly towards me and tell me to mind my business. Even though I was upset about her behavior initially, I just kind of let it go after a while. My life was going on pretty well until one day, about 5 months after Jody's bankruptcy period was done, Jody showed up at my door. Now, I was surprised because I did not expect her to be there. I hadn't spoken to her for the past few months. I had an inkling about what she wanted, so I prepared myself to stand my ground and tell her that I wasn't going to help her out in any way. I invited her in, and when I took a better look at her, she looked like an absolute mess. Her hair looked like a mess, she lost a lot of weight, and she looked like she hadn't slept in months. Things look like they're going really rough for you. Is everything okay? No, I'm struggling a lot. I'm so sorry to hear that. Yeah, after you left, I sort of went down this whole spiral. At least when you were there, I wasn't fully alone, but after you left, I realized just how alone I was. I tried to reach out to you, but you always pushed me away. I know, and I'm so sorry for that. I didn't mean to push you away and be so hurtful. I was just angry with a lot of things. Like what? I was angry with myself for being so alone. I was angry with your dad for leaving me alone, and I was angry that I was struggling so much. I get that. It's been 5 years and I still haven't been able to find a job. I've just been so depressed. I've nearly exhausted all the money your dad left me, and my family is cutting off helping me too. I tried to explain to them how I've been feeling, but they simply won't understand. In fact, they won't even listen to me. Oh, Jody, I didn't know you were struggling this much. And I hate constantly coming back to you. You've done the most for me, but if there's any way... I was torn. On one hand, I had made up my mind to not help Jody, but on the other hand, this was a woman who was struggling. I knew firsthand what depression could do to someone. I empathized with her. Before I knew it, I was telling Jody that I would help her again. Jody cried in joy and thanked me profusely. I was happy that I could help her out. I understood what she was struggling with, and I was never someone to leave someone stranded when they were clearly suffering. The next week, I was once again at the bank figuring things out for Jody. Turns out this time she hadn't made her mortgage payments for 5 months. I wondered why she didn't get her mortgage readjusted and maybe just reduce the monthly payments, but I just rationalized it by thinking that she was suffering too much to think clearly. As I went over Jody's mortgage, I realized she only had about $75,000 left to pay off, including her late fees and all that, to fully be done with her mortgage. Now, in the past 5 years, I had saved a lot more money, and I definitely had that amount in my account. I checked with Jody if she'd just want me to pay off her mortgage, and over time, she could pay me, and she cried. She asked me if that would be possible, and when I said it would, she promised me that she would pay me back. I told her I would get her promise in writing within the next week and then pay her loan off. I don't know how she did it, but she convinced me to pay her loan first and then make the contract with her. After I settled her loan, I made my way over to her place. There was an unfamiliar car parked in the driveway. The front door was unlocked, and when I walked in, I heard Jody laughing loudly along with the sound of another man. When I walked into the living room, I saw Jody sitting on another man's lap with her arms around him. That made me feel icky. Just a week ago, she was telling me about how much she had loved my dad and how she would never be able to get over him. She told me that my dad would have been very proud of me, and in general, she kept bringing up my dad. Looking back, that was probably her way of emotionally blackmailing me into paying off her loan. When Jody realized I was standing there, she laughed and pointed at me while she spoke to her partner. Darling, look, that's the girl I was telling you about. She's the daughter of the man from whom I got this house. I tricked her into paying it off, and now we can live here happily. What? What are you talking about? Oh, don't tell me you're really that stupid. You really think I couldn't get a job? I knew you could, and that's exactly why I stopped paying for you the first time around. Oh, right. I put on that whole act and got you to pay it off. That was an act? Ugh, of course. Did you even love my dad? You, God, no. I just needed the money because I did not want to work. I was tired of constantly being tired, so I married an older man with money. Man, I really hoped he'd live longer. You are sick. I can't believe I helped you out for so long. I can't believe my dad fell for you. Do you even know how much he loved you? Yeah, I don't care. Say what you want. At the end of the day, I own a house and that's all I care about. Plus, I get to live with my boyfriend here. I stormed out of the house. I felt my tears running down my face and I wanted nothing more than to hurt Jody. How could she do something as vile as this? I knew I couldn't let Jody win that easily. I knew just how to get her off of her high horse. You see, since I was transferring a large amount, my bank was holding the money for a day to give me the opportunity to cancel the transaction. Jody didn't know about this, and if she had actually been smart enough, she would have waited to reveal her grand scheme. I was grateful she was stupid. I really was. I called my bank and canceled the transaction. I then blocked Jody's number and blocked her from all of my socials. I made sure that there was no way for her to reach me. I knew it would take another month or so for her to realize that the mortgage payment was not done, so I decided to move as well. I was hurting, but at the same time I was glad I was able to give Jody a taste of her own medicine. I hoped that she would face the worst consequences, and from what I found out later, Jody's house did get foreclosed. I heard from various mutual friends and connections that she's been couch surfing for a while now. Her boyfriend left her, and she has no income as yet. She tried to badmouth me, but quickly realized that no one was siding with her. In fact, a bunch of them reached out to me to check on how I was doing. I felt like I had vindicated my dad by denying her the opportunity to own his house. I've learned to never let anyone use my emotions to appeal to me. People are crappy and will never miss out on an opportunity to use you. I've learned to let go once I've already been burnt because people rarely ever change. In a way, I guess I'm grateful for this experience. I will continue to live happily and I will honor my dad's memories without letting them influence anything I do. Thanks for listening. Hello, my name's Gigi and I'm 29 years old. My husband, Saul, and I just became new homeowners, and yeah, I know what you might be thinking. Owning a house in this economy? At that age? How did you do that? Well, I wish I could tell you that it was all a matter of hard work, but it actually was a gift that my husband's grandfather, Robbie, gave to us. But my mother-in-law, Jen, who was staying with us, had a lot to say about it, and that did not go so well for her. Before I tell you my story, I feel like it's important to give you a little backstory about my husband's family and how we came to be in a relationship. For starters, I have an awesome relationship with Saul's recently retired grandfather. Yes, grandfather. His name is Robbie. Robbie had single-handedly raised Saul's mother, Jen. His wife had died during childbirth and he loved her too much to even find anyone else. He has admitted to Saul and me that he felt bad that Jen never got to have a mother, so he spoiled her senselessly. Robbie is a pretty wealthy man. He comes from family wealth and he's never afraid to splurge on the people he loves. So when I say that Jen was spoiled when she was growing up, I mean it. Jen always got what she wanted, and that attitude carried on into adulthood because Robbie could never say no to her. Jen had gotten pregnant when she was 17. The father ran away because he wanted nothing to do with the child, and Jen never revealed who the father was either. Robbie was not thrilled that she got pregnant, but ultimately decided that he would stand by her regardless of whatever decision she made. When she had Sol, she cared for him for a year or so and ultimately decided that a child weighed her down too much. She left him in Robbie's care. Robbie was upset that his daughter was not following through with her responsibilities. At the same time, he was glad he got to have a second chance at raising a child. He was a little more strict with Sol. He still spoiled Sol, but not to the same extent that he had done for Jen. Sol had always considered Robbie to be his dad because he was the one who raised him. Sol's mom, Jen, had disappeared to some college somewhere and then worked someplace also for the next 10 years. And when she came back, she tried to insert herself in Sol's life as his mom. Sol didn't like it, but he didn't oppose her because he had heard of how stubborn she was with getting the things she wanted. When it came time to move to college, Sol moved out and Robbie supported him. It was at college that I met Sol. We met because we had friends in the same circles and we just clicked instantly. It didn't take long for us to start dating, and if I really recall correctly, after 6 months of dating, Sol introduced me to Robbie. Robbie and I got along really well, and I was happy that Sol had such a positive influence in his life. The one person who did not like me was, you guessed it, Jen. Now, after about a year of dating, Sol decided that we should meet his mom because he wanted to introduce me to her. I have a pretty deadly peanut allergy, so Sol informed her in advance. When we got to her place, she barely looked my way or even talked to me. The only time she did was when it was time to eat. She had this evil look in her eye that made me feel a little on edge, but I ignored it. Just as I was about to put a spoonful of food in my mouth, Sol literally leapt off his seat and knocked the spoon out of my hand. What the hell? Why'd you do that? It has peanuts in it. Jen, what were you trying to do? I told you she's allergic. Oh, come on, it's just a peanut allergy. She needs to grow up. Are you stupid? Excuse me? That's no way to talk to your mother. Apologize now. Why the hell should I? You almost killed Gigi. There's no need to make such a big deal about this. It's a tiny allergy, right, Gigi? Actually, no. I almost did die on multiple occasions just from cross-contamination. Ugh, what a child. Dad, tell Sol to apologize to me for disrespectfully talking to me. Absolutely not. Sol asked you not to do one thing, and that's exactly what you did. To top it off, you're still ignoring the fact that you could have killed the girl. Why did you do that? You want to know? Fine. I don't like her. But you don't even know her. Yeah, but she's taking my son away from me, and I don't like that. So, why don't you and Gigi head out? Here's some cash. Go get yourself some good non-deathly lunch. I'll speak to Jen. I was shaken up. Never in my life had anyone wanted to outright kill me. And to hear Jen say that she didn't like me just like that? Wow, that hurt. Sol was furious at Jen, and once he cooled down, he apologized to me over and over again. Of course, I didn't need him to apologize to me because he did nothing wrong. Still, after that, two things happened. First, Sol stopped speaking to her. He cut off all contact with her. Second, Robbie cut off financial support for Jen. He kicked her out of his house and told her to live by herself. I was sure that that only would have made her hate me more, but I realized that I wouldn't have to see her again until absolutely necessary, so I didn't mind. After that, life went back to normal for Sol and me. Once a month, we would go out to either lunch or dinner with Robbie, and that was about all the contact we had with Sol's family. Sol and I knew that we were the ones for each other, yet we decided to wait until we were both financially stable enough to get married. When we finally got engaged, we waited for another year and a half to plan out our details of our wedding. When it came time to send out invites, we debated sending one to Jen, but in the end, we still sent her one. I will admit we were glad to see that she hadn't RSVP'd us. I guess Jen hated me way too much to attend her own son's wedding. Anyway, it was still a grand time for Sol and I. Robbie had been too busy traveling around the world to attend our wedding. We didn't mind that because honestly, that man deserved it. He worked super hard all his life and he raised not only his daughter but his grandson too. When he finally came back, he told us that he had a surprise for us. Sol and I were excited because we were expecting Robbie to give us some souvenirs or even some snacks or candies from the countries he visited. Robbie told us to come over to his place for dinner one night. Dinner with Robbie is always a good time. He told us all about his little adventures on his trip. Sol and I were a mess of tears from laughing too hard. Finally, after dinner, Robbie decided to reveal his surprise to us. He placed a pair of keys in front of Sol and I. We looked at him in confusion. "What's this about, Papa?" "These are the keys to your new house." "What? Are you being serious?" "As serious as a heart attack." But why?" "I wasn't able to attend your wedding and I didn't give you a wedding gift either." "So you bought us a house?" "I couldn't think of a better gift. Am I wrong?" "No, although I will say you are one unhinged man." "Ha, that's the truth." "Thanks a lot, Papa." "Of course, although there is one small hiccup." "What is it?" "Well, Jen has been running low on finances and she reached out to me about helping her out. I told her I'd put up with her one last time, but if she does or says anything out of line, she's going to get thrown out." "Oh, so I'll have to meet Mom?" "Yeah, and put up with her for another 3 months." "Uh-oh." "I know, it's not the most ideal, but she'll stay with you guys for a little while. She promised me she'll be on her best behavior, so I don't think there'll be too much to worry about." "All right, that's doable." Robbie had done us a huge favor by buying us a house. We could use the money we usually spend on rent to save up even more, so it felt really wrong to tell him that we wouldn't want Jen staying with us. I sensed how skeptical Sol was too, and it made me feel better that I wasn't the only one who wasn't feeling too good about the arrangement. Robbie went on to explain to us that he was going to be visiting a friend for a while next month and that he had allowed his other friend's son to stay at his place until he came back, which was why he couldn't put Jen up himself. Which was fair, but still, Sol and I decided to move in as soon as possible because we wanted to at least have some time in our new house before Jen came over. Robbie also was there with us while we moved in. He helped us settle in and as best he could. He let us get used to our new place for a week before telling us that Jen was going to move in the day after the next. I was queasy with nerves. The last time I saw Jen, she tried to give me an anaphylactic shock. I did not want to live with her. It would be exhausting to constantly be on guard in my own home. But I guess it was one small price to pay for a beautiful house that was our own. Robbie was with us when Jen brought all her stuff with her. We planned to have dinner together, so I spent most of the day just cooking and preparing. It was a great way to expend my nervous energy. Jen happily greeted Sol and asked him a bunch of questions about himself while she just ignored me altogether. When we walked into the house, Jen looked around for a while before deciding to talk. What a house!" "I know, right?" "Which one of you earns more money?" Gigi. Why does that matter?" "First of all, that's embarrassing. You need to earn more than her. Secondly, this is an ugly house." "Excuse me?" "Mom, that's unnecessary. I can see that you guys really struggled to buy this place. It really is the ugliest place I've stepped foot in." "That's really rude to say, especially when you'll be living here because we let you." "I know, it's a shame that this is where I have to live until I move." "You're being very hypocritical. At least we were able to afford a house. You can't even afford to rent a place." "You only talk back this way to me because of your wife. If it wasn't for her, you'd have been worshipping the ground I walked on. There's something seriously wrong with you. Okay, that's enough. Let's just get on with dinner. Robbie must not have told Jen that he was the one who bought the house for us. When Jen called the house ugly, I saw Robbie's expression harden, and then she went on to say a lot more stuff, and Robbie looked like he was ready to throw her out. I have to admit that Jen calling our new house ugly hurt. The funniest part was that Saul was the one who was in charge of the interior decorating, and he did a fantastic job at it. If she had known that, I doubt she would have said any of the things that she said. And to hear her insult me again was no fun either. It was kind of sad that I was prepared for it though. She constantly mocked me and insulted me because she always thought that I had taken her son away from her. But I guess she just never realized that her son was avoiding her for the longest time. He just started speaking up because her actions and words began to affect me. Dinner was awkward. Saul and Robbie seemed majorly ticked off from the previous interaction with Jen. And Jen did not seem to pick up on the vibes because she went on to keep trash talking the house. At some point though, it just got so funny to me. The fact that she didn't know anything and here she was openly slamming her father and her son. After dinner, Jen told us that she was jet lagged, which is very funny because she literally flew over from one state over where there's no difference in time zone, and retreated to her room. At that point, Robbie, Saul and I made our way over to the den where we discussed what had just happened. Well, that was terrible. I swear, if she wasn't my mother, I would have had some very choice words to say. Did you not tell her that you bought this house for us, Robbie? I didn't see why I had to, but I guess that worked in my favor because I got to see if she was going to be any different, which she won't. It's going to be rough living with her. But it'll be okay. It's only another 3 months. She'll be out of our hair before you know it. Hell no, I'm not letting you guys live with a monster like that. The only reason I made this arrangement was because she begged me for a whole month to help her out and promised me over and over again that she had changed. I see no change in her, and I don't want to help her out anymore. Oh, wow. So are you just going to kick her out? Yeah, I don't think it would be that easy. Remember the tantrum she threw when you cut her off financially before? She will not leave this house that easily. I think that issue can be solved pretty easily. We'll just change all the locks in the house so she won't be able to get back in. But she doesn't have her set of keys yet? I've got them right here. Just give them to her tomorrow morning before you guys head to work. I know she'll want to go out and meet some friends. When she gets back, she'll be stuck outside till you come back. That should teach her a lesson. It was nice to have Robbie side with us. If there was one thing that Robbie absolutely hated, it was being ungrateful. That was literally Jen's entire personality. Robbie had tried his hardest to discipline that out of her, but she just never seemed to learn. The next day, I took a day off so I could be there to watch over the locks getting changed. I pretended that I was going out to work in the morning and handed Jen her set of keys. She smirked at me and asked me if I was happy that she would be staying with me. I told her that she was family, so I was more than happy to be able to help her out. She then told me that she was going to make my life hell, and that if I had the audacity to complain to her father about her behavior, she would get in the way of my marriage. I was so close to telling her about the plan because Jen really knew how to get on people's nerves, but I kept my mouth shut and just let Jen say what she wanted to. In the end, I knew that I would be the one who won. I left the house that morning and just drove around for a while. I kept checking and reviewing our security footage to see if Jen left, and about 2 hours after I left the house, she stepped out. I wasn't sure about how long she'd be out, so I contacted the number Robbie had given me and asked the person to get to my place as quickly as possible. I raced home too. By the time I got back home, the person who was going to change the locks was also there. While he busied himself with the locks, I got to packing Jen's stuff. She spent the entire night unpacking her things, but it still took a fairly short amount of time to repack everything. I set her bags outside the main door and along with them attached a copy of the house deed which outlined in it the owner of the house and the buyer of the house. While Saul and I were listed as owners, Robbie was listed as the buyer. Once the man was done changing the locks, he handed me the new keys and left. I quickly got out of the house and drove to a nearby cafe where I kept a keen eye on the security footage. I couldn't wait to see Jen's reaction to everything. It took about another 2 hours for Jen to return. She saw her bags out front and looked around in confusion. She tried to open the door, but that didn't work. She began to get frustrated as she kept trying to unlock the door. When her frustration reached its peak, she began kicking the door. I didn't know what she thought she would accomplish, but it sure was funny as hell to watch her struggle. Eventually, she gave up and sat on the bench outside the door. She looked at her bags and finally saw the note attached to it. The security footage was grainy, but I swear I could see her eyes widen as she understood what the paper said. She looked around as if to see if someone might come out and talk to her, but there was no one. She went and sat back down on the bench and put her head in her hands. She looked like a woman that had lost it all. She picked up her phone and called Robbie, but he never picked up her calls again. She tried Saul, and finally she tried me. I debated picking up the call, but eventually my curiosity got the better of me and I picked it up. "Hey Jen, is everything okay?" "Don't play stupid. You know what you did." "Huh? What are you talking about?" "You tricked me." "I'm really going to need you to start making sense here. I have to get back to work." "You knew that my father bought the house. Yet you never told me about it. You just watched as I said what I said while my father was right there." "Why did you even have to say those things? Even if you thought that I bought the house, shouldn't you have been grateful that I was opening my house to you?" "Shut up. My son would have made sure that I stayed with you." "I don't know what kind of warped perception you have about Saul, but I can assure you he was even less thrilled about you staying with us than me. If anything, he was the one who was ready to throw you out first." "I don't care about that. I'm homeless now, and you have to fix it." "Robbie did his best to provide for you. You bit the hand that fed you, and now you have to face the consequences. I will make sure you regret doing this to me." "If you keep that attitude up, you're not going to get anywhere. Goodbye." It felt so good to finally be able to tell Jen what was on my mind. The woman had it coming for her. She wouldn't have to be a part of our lives anymore, and I was beyond happy about that. Thankfully, Jen left our house without much of a fuss. When Robbie and Saul came over later on in the evening, I replayed the footage back to them and told them about my call with Jen. We shared a hearty laugh together, although Robbie did tell us that he was really disappointed in the way that Jen turned out. I did feel Robbie's pain. I mean, I wouldn't know how to react if my child turned out anything like Jen. But I was also happy that Robbie had set his foot down on Jen. There was only one way to teach spoiled brats a lesson, and that was to take away their privileges. It will be a tough road for Jen, but hopefully she'll learn her lesson, and in time, Saul and I could actually have a decent relationship with her. It's been about 6 months since all of this has happened, and Saul and I are living very happily in our new house. We've been saving up a lot of money, and we're planning on starting a family soon. Robbie is having the time of his life, traveling to various places, and we're happy that he's managed to occupy his time well. Although, whenever he is in town, he makes sure to stay with us, and like always, those times are amazing. If there's one thing I've learned throughout all of this, it was to learn from Robbie's mistakes. I don't want a child like Jen, and I will make sure that my child is raised to be a decent human being. Thanks for listening.